Hello guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another Hammer horror film review. Tonight we're looking at one of my favourites. We're looking at Frankenstein and the Monsters from Hell. The Monster from Hell, not monsters. This is Hammer's last entry into the Frankenstein stories. It stars Peter Cushing returning as Victor Frankenstein. Let's have a little look at this edition. This is the collector's edition from Second Sight. It contains the Blu-ray of the film. It contains a wonderful booklet, which is absolutely amazing. Really cool. Really cool booklet. And it contains some art cards, which are also awesome. Here's one, the cover. Really like that. The legend. And some original sort of artwork. And that's the art card. So that's this edition. Now this, as I said, it was Hammer's very last entry into the Frankenstein story. And this one starts off with a grave robber who you may recognise. He starred in The Omen. He was the priest in The Omen. And he starred in the film I reviewed not so long ago on my channel, The Scars of Dracula. He was also a slave in this one. In this one, he's a body snatcher, so he sort of robs graves and stuff like. It's a Burke and Hare kind of character, and he's robbing this grave, and he's sort of like seen by one of the local policemen, the sergeant. So the sergeant sort of confronts him, and he throws his little spade at him, which knocks the sergeant over, and the sergeant falls into the grave that he was digging out the body from, and he scarpers off with the body on the trolley, and he's out of there. And the sergeant sort of stumbles back to his feet, wondering what's going on. He doesn't really look like a sergeant, to be honest, but he kind of looks like, he reminds me of the guy out of the Will Hay films. But there we are. And anyway, so our body snatchers got away with the body, and he arrives at a house in the town, and he knocks on the door, and there's a young doctor answers the door. I'm trying to remember who is played by. Let me try and have a look for you. Doesn't give his name on there, who the actor is. And he's a young doctor, sort of like doing experiments on dead bodies. Now he's also reading, we see him in his laboratory reading from a book written by Baron Frankenstein. So he's there sort of making out these bodies, and we see him ghastly and gorely taking out an eyeball, and he sticks it into a jar. He's got these sort of like eyeballs, so he's collecting all these sort of body parts from different bodies that are arising from this graveyard. And the gravedigger, he doesn't want to enter his laboratory. He goes, I've been in there once before, I don't want to go in there again. And so he sort of like takes his money and sort of does scarpers. And so it's a bit of a waste, I suppose, because all that this doctor wanted was the eye of this corpse. And we then go to the local pub, as we always do in these films, and our body snatcher arrives there with his penny to buy his booze. So he goes in to buy his booze, and the barman quite willingly sells it to him because he's got the money. And our sergeant walks into the bar, looking very disgruntled and very put out of place, should I say? And he straight away recognises the body snatcher and puts his hand on his shoulder, and obviously he's going to arrest the body snatcher. But the body snatcher says to him that before you decide to arrest me, please don't, and listen to what I've got to say. And so he then goes ahead and tells him about all the bodies and experiments that this doctor's doing in this house. So the policeman goes to investigate that, and we join back at the house where we see our professor, and he hears this noise coming from outside. And he looks out and he sees a policeman walking towards the house and coming in. And so he hides behind a curtain, okay, and the police officer knocks on the door and he doesn't answer, so he just bursts his way in. And he lights like the old sort of like gas sort of lantern that they had then, and he sees all the abominations in the laboratory of this body that's been mutilated on the table for its eyes. And he looks around and he sees a jar of the eyes. He picks the jars up and he holds the jar up like Hamlet does with the skull. And that's quite cool. And then he hears the doctor saying, put that down. And the doctor comes away from the curtain to take the jar off this policeman. And in the struggle, it's quite weird because while he's looking in the jar, one of the eyes sort of moves and looks at him, and it freaks him out. Anyway, so the doctor goes to try and take the jar off him, so they start struggling and they all spill out on the floor. So we see the doctor then on his hands and knees trying to recover all these human eyeballs. It's very grotesque. It's very, very, and for the time it must have been absolutely extremely gory and disgusting. And so the doctor asks him what he's doing, and he says, well, I'm building a human body out of dead bodies. So then the police officer wants to arrest him for sorcery. And so eventually we see our young doctor in a court with the judge, and we've got the body snatcher and the police officer behind him as witnesses. And the judge is disgusted by his behaviour and sends him to a prison for the criminally insane for 5 years. So off he goes. To prison. We arrive at the prison in horse and cart, and the two sort of prison guards come out and take him, and he tried to handcuff him. He goes, there's no need for that. He goes, I'll tell you what there's need for. So they handcuff him and take him in. And as they go in, they walk past the director's room. The director's name is Adolf Klaus. Okay, so he wants to see the director. So he knocks on the door with his foot and he says, come in. So he goes in and he introduces himself to the director as a doctor. So he's very interested in him. Oh, doctor, and all this sort of thing. And he goes, I'm trying to ask you about Baron Frankenstein. Didn't he used to be a patient here? He said, yeah, but he died years ago. And so he goes, would you like a drink? He goes, oh, it's very kind of you. Yes, please. So he pours him out a drink, and then he realises his hands are handcuffed, and realises he's actually one of the prisoners. So then he's shocked, and he calls the guards in, and they pull him out and take him away. So they decide then to sort of torment the doctor, the guards, by bringing all these sort of deranged patients to this area of the prison, and they rip the doctor's shirt off, and the guy's got this fire hose, and he's just sort of like firing water at him to wash him, and it's sort of like knocking him against the wall, knocking him on the floor, and he gets covered in cuts and abrasions and all this sort of thing, and all these demented patients are sort of laughing, thinking it's funny. And one of them says, "Oh, my mum used to say cleanliness is next to godliness," and all this sort of thing. It's so funny and cool. And there's a young girl that's not very amused by what's going on. And then he turns around and they spray the water in his head, and he bashes his head against the wall, and he sort of falls on the floor half conscious. And then they all stop because someone enters the room, and it's Peter Cushing playing Frankenstein. He's not dead. They've just told everyone that he's dead. He's actually still there. And we meet Frankenstein for the first time. And he rushes off to the director's room with the two jailers, saying that they're abusing a new patient. And he's not happy with this sort of thing. And it's almost like we now find out that Dr. or Victor Frankenstein is running this asylum, by the looks of it, because he seems to have control over the director. So what's going to happen? Is Victor going to find out that this is a doctor that's been following his experiments? Are they going to work together to produce another dead human being, or dare I say it, a monster? You need to watch it and find out. What do I think of Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell? It's fantastic. It's probably one in my top 3 favourite Frankenstein movies from Hammer. It's just absolutely amazing film. It's so cool, and it's actually quite gory. It's probably one of the more gory sort of Hammer films. This is in the later part of the Hammers, and you can see Christopher Cushing, Peter Cushing in this film. He looks old, and he looks a bit ill, you know. You can see in him. He does look a lot frailer in this sort of film. But that doesn't stop him producing a wonderful performance as Victor Frankenstein. And it's a really, really cool story. Now, the pluses of this edition: it looks stunning. It looks amazing. Again, Second Sight have come tops with another brilliant reproduction of an old film. They're just masters at doing these sort of films. The acting is stellar, absolutely fantastic. It's one of the better acted, I think, Hammer films, and the story is quite dark. It's quite a dark sort of story, really. You've got one scientist who's following another scientist's idea, and then they meet, and then they're gonna probably coincide and work together to create this abomination. And it's absolutely fantastic. It's wonderful. I'm going to score this film an amazing watch and give it a 9 out of 10. It's fantastic. It's definitely one of my favourite Hammer films. You must have seen it in my top 10 favourite Hammer films of all time. I'm sure it's in there in my top 10. Absolutely fantastic. Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell. 9 out of 10. Any of you guys seen it? If you have, let me know down below what you think of it. It's a really cool film, and it's one of those ones that seem to disappear for quite a long time. I used to have this years ago on VHS, and I forgot all about it until Second Sight reproduced it again and brought it out, and I thought, oh my God, I remember that film. I remember it being quite a gory one for Hammer, and it's not gory, but for Hammer I find it quite gory. A bit like Scars of Dracula, that was quite gory for Hammer. And I remembered how much I really enjoyed it. So when I managed to pick this up, I just thought, oh, fantastic, great. If there's one real sort of redone Hammer films to have in your collection, this is one of them. It's really cool. Yes, it's good to have all the other Frankensteins, like the Curse of Frankenstein, and that before this, because, you know, this is Frankenstein in his later years. That was Frankenstein in his youth. So Hammer seemed to have followed him through his life, and now we see him in his latter years. So it's really, really cool. Really good film. Guys, till my next video, please check out some horror channels for me. Check out Horror Hands, The Horror Geek, Man v Film, RS Designs, Pizzlewell, I Am Ice Lord, Cat Watches Horror Movies, Grumpy Andrew's Haunted House. And a massive shout out to my lad. Till next time, look after yourselves, look after one another, and I really hope I see you all soon.